All right, it's about 2 after, so I'm going to get started. And the first couple of slides are just some intro, so don't think anyone's going to miss anything if they're a little bit late, but thank you for joining us today to talk about jumpstarting your enrollment. Just some logistic things on, that went really fast. Carrie's rushing me already. Just some logistics things for everyone today if you haven't joined us on a webinar before, but we are using the Zoom platform, so our lines are on mute. So we cannot hear you, we cannot see you. If you do have a question at any point in the webinar, please do use the chat or the Q&A features at the bottom of your screen. We will be keeping an eye on those. If it makes sense, we might answer them in real time, but generally we will save those towards the end of the session so that we can kind of get to everybody's questions. And then we will be sending a recording to everybody who is registered. So if you have to drop off for some reason, or you have a colleague that you know was not able to make it last minute, they will get the recording, they will get the deck, they will get some highlights so that we can share this information with everybody who was interested. Just a little bit about what we're going to walk through today is very, very quickly, in case you're not familiar, I'm going to walk you through a little bit about who we are at Campus CSP and why we're holding a session like this today. And then we're going to really jump right into some really actionable tips that you can use to jumpstart your next enrollment cycle. We want to make sure you walk away from this webinar with some ideas of things that you can start talking to your colleagues and put into position really quickly. In particular, we're going to look at this way that Pacific Lutheran University has been doing this. We are joined by their Dean of Admission, and she's going to share a little bit about what they're doing and the results that they've been seeing. And then, like I said, we're going to get to some Q&A. So if anything about Melody strategy piques your interest, or Campus CSP in general, or just you want to talk with some colleagues about ideas, we can have that about half an hour towards the end of the session to talk about that. And again, use the chat feature because I can't see you. So let's get to the intros on who is joining me today. I have with me two amazing women who both have a lot of experience on the admissions and enrollment side of campus. First is Carrie Meeks-Griffin. She is an account manager here at Campus ESP, but prior to about a year ago, actually less than a year ago, she was in your shoes as admissions representative at Pitt was the last place you were at. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, Carrie, and what kind of roles you've been in before?
Sure. New to Campus ESP, but definitely not new to higher education. Almost 20 years of experience in enrollment management. Anything you can think of in enrollment management, most likely at some point over those 20 years I was involved in. I did work at the University of Pittsburgh for the majority of the time, so large urban research institution, but also had an interim role as a director of admissions for one of the regional campuses of Pitt at Pitt Greensburg. So also got that perspective of a smaller campus and a smaller school as well.
Great. We're super excited to have you as part of Campus ESP and all your knowledge. And we're also excited to have today with us Melody Ferguson, the newly minted Dean of Admission at Pacific Lutheran. You've been there for a while, but it's a new fancy title for you. Melody, why don't you talk to us a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, thanks, Mel. Yeah, I've been at Pacific Lutheran University for about 11 years. So served a variety of roles, all in admission, but now do oversee undergraduate and graduate admission. So that's new for me. Don't ask me any questions about graduate admission. Don't know how to answer them yet. But we've been a Campus ESP partner for a couple years, and I think in my kind of 20 years in higher education, parents and family members are always a topic of conversation. So I'm excited to be here to talk more about this and to hear your questions and engage in that conversation. I also like to mention I am the parent of a rising junior. So I am also my target population a little bit. So I do think about that a lot in this role.
Your own target audience. I love it. All right, and now our really, really quick little explanation of what Campus ESP is. If you are not familiar, if this is the first time you're joining us on a webinar or you're just kind of exposed to us, we're just going to give you a little bit of context on who we are. You can go to the next slide. There we go. So Campus ESP is a complete parent engagement strategy solution. We are a combination of a platform, email communications, text communications, and some other little bit of elements that basically allow you to connect with the parents, family members, and supporters of your students. That starts as early as your inquiry students, all through their prospective journey with you in the admission and enrollment stage, to actually pass that when they become a current student on your campus. We kind of cover that entire student life cycle. We really want to make sure that families are understanding the entire process. Some of them have never been through it before. If it's a first-gen student, some of them went through it, 15, 20, 30 years ago, but a lot has changed. So making sure that families feel like they are included, that they understand the process, and that they are important will help with your goals. We can help you make sure that they know the information when they need it, nudge behavior, which keeps their students on track and moving towards their application, their deposit. We also give you a lot of really great back-end data about all the content that we're putting out so that you can see what your families are engaging with, what's resonating, and what maybe you want to expand or pull back on to better serve your population. We are super excited to be trusted by over 315 colleges. I think we're actually like 321 as of this morning. And I think we're getting actually close to like 6 or 7 million families now. We need to update this slide, which is kind of crazy when we think about it. But it really is a testament to the fact that colleges are recognizing the value and the influence of families. And the families are really excited to have a place that they can feel included and get the information that they need to help their students. And after this session, if you have any more questions, obviously campusesp.com is a great place to go. In particular, our blog and resources section. Even if you decide that this is not an investment you ever want to make or not right now, there is a lot of information here that is really helpful for thinking about and building your family engagement strategy. We've got some case studies, we've got webinar recordings from past webinars, a lot of independent research that we do that really can just help you understand what parents are looking for, their expectations, their needs, and how you can better serve them. And with that, I'm going to put myself off camera and I'm going to let the two experts take the wheel here as they talk about Pacific Lutheran, the strategy there, and how you guys can start learning from this example and get a little bit of a jump start on your enrollment season. So take it away, ladies.
Thanks, Mel. So you heard all those great things about Campus ESP. Let's tell you some great things about Pacific Lutheran. So full-time enrollment, about 2,300. Important to know, and we'll touch on this several times today, but 42% of Pacific Lutheran students are first generation. They launched their family portal with Campus ESP in September 2021, and over 10,000 prospective families are in the portal. Melanie, you want to talk about previous enrollment climate and pain points at Pacific Lutheran and anything else you want to add about your institution?
Yeah, one, I think we launched the parent portal at the kind of exact right time. We were having these conversations kind of in that spring of 2020 kind of season and thinking about how do we want to engage parents and families? And then as we went to the virtual environment, we needed a tool. We were also transitioning to Slate and needed to really spend and focus our time building our student communication while not giving up on our family communication that we had started. So all of that kind of came together. And when we came across Campus ESP, it seemed like a really easy way, we were hoping, to engage with parents and family members. We are highly first generation, we're highly regional. So I think that's the other thing is we're not trying to be a national institution. We really are kind of a backyard school here in the Pacific Northwest and a few kind of states, both Northeast, South, and West of us. But we really do sit in this area and we're known for care and individualized attention, and a tool like Campus ESP, just like Mel was mentioning, seemed to allow us to bring parents and family members into that fold and not separate them from their students. So I think it served a lot of purposes for us that we were missing before. It also gave us a reason to start communicating with parents and families in a more specific way.
Mm-hmm. And how did you find Campus ESP?
Yeah, so we found it through our search partner. So that was kind of one of as we were talking to them about this pain point of family engagement and trying different things and failing and not wanting to do them again, the Facebook groups, the BCCing parents, all of that kind of thing. They brought this kind of tool up as something we should consider and check out. So, so it was through conversations with other colleagues and vendors.
I'm sure a lot of people on this call can attest to the rogue Facebook groups. For me, being an enrollment management professional, College Confidential was kind of the bane of my existence, going on there and just seeing all the misinformation coming from other parents that I know were trying to be really helpful, but a lot of misinformation was spread there. So having a resource where the official information just for your parents and families, I'm sure has helped in that process.
Yeah.
Well, why are we all here? Of course, we know that parents and families are involved with their students' college search. Our research actually shows it's 97%. So really the takeaway here is that families play a huge role in the admissions process. And we're also going to give you a sneak peek at some of our brand new data that's just about to be released. We've seen these numbers grow over the past 3 years pretty significantly, even at 2020 when you were thinking 64%, that of parents that prefer communication at least weekly. Now it's grown to 88%. So 88% of prospective parents expect communication at least weekly. Melody, what do you think about these new stats with 88%?
I think they really make sense for a lot of reasons. And I think that's why we're probably in this webinar, signed up for this webinar. Our students were with us at home, virtual learning for a while. We became, had kind of established a different type of relationship with our high schools, with our middle schools as parents. And now we're expecting some of that, not all of that, but I think from the colleges that we're going into. And so I think some of it is related to that experience for sure. But I also just think there is so much information out there that it's overwhelming, whether you're a first generation family or not. Where do you go for the right information, the deadlines, the dates? It's hard to navigate a college's website. We all try really hard, but I've never had a student tell me, this is the website that's the easiest to navigate. So I think giving parents and family members a place where they can go, where they feel that there is legitimate information and it's authentic information, it's coming straight from the college. This doesn't surprise me. I think based on just where we are in terms of information and where we are in terms of relationships between family members and their high school students.
And as we say, always providing the right information at the right time, and you can do that here. All right, so let's get into the meat of the presentation, talking about our tips for you as you go through the summer and begin to ramp up for your next cohort. Our first tip is going to be communicate with parents and families as early as possible. Now, Mel, how are you collecting parent and family contact information?
Yeah, and I'm going to be really transparent. This is the one I think we're still figuring out because, we all can get parent and family information off the application. Hopefully we're all pulling it off of there and are using that in some way. And that's what we were always doing. But we're a school in Tacoma, Washington. So, kind of south of Seattle, Washington State. For those of you that don't know the climate of Washington, I think it's assumed that it's different than it is. We are very low in post-secondary attainment rate. I believe like 47th in the nation. So our high school students are not going to college at the same rate as other states. And because of that, they apply very late. So we're getting applications yesterday, for example, we're enrolling in mission school. So we needed a way to start communicating with parents and families more in that search process when young people are starting to look at schools. They're maybe not applying, but maybe they're doing a project at school or through their Avid class or something. We wanted to start communicating earlier. So we've started trying to do various things. When we get an inquiry in, we send something out, usually about 2 weeks later. It's just an automated email and slate that says, would you like your parent or family member to start getting information too to help you with your college search? And it's a short form, first name, last name, email, very easy relationship. And we get those back. We've been doing it at any event or program, kind of putting QR codes out for parents and families members to sign up for Campus ESP. We created a postcard that we hand out to families when they visit. So really trying to get that a little bit earlier. I think we're going to try even some additional things this year, but this is very important to us and something we want to continuously do better. So if some of you have ideas, I would love to hear that as well.
Yeah, and if any of y'all want to drop in the chat how you're collecting parent and family contact information, most of the schools that I'm interacting with, I recently was at New York SACAC talking to other colleges and universities. Most of them are getting that contact information at the point of application. So thinking about ways, as Melody said, to get that information sooner in the process. There are many schools that I talk to that they haven't even thought about adding it to their RFI or adding it to their inquiry form. Always optional, of course. Students don't have to add it, but if you're not asking for it, you're not going to get it. So at least make the ask. But curious to see what some of our schools on this call are doing and where they're getting that information. Okay, so based on data from our customers, we find that students with a parent using Campus ESP are nearly 3 times more likely to convert from inquiry to applicant, which is amazing and great numbers to see. And how this is happening at PLU is it's actually 8 times. So the prospective PLU students with a parent using Campus ESP are nearly 8 times more likely to convert from inquiry to applicant. So these are definitely really amazing numbers. I'm sure Melody smiles when she sees this to think how that is converting. And what's your take on this?
Yeah, I think what this is, I mean, one, it's a small number still. So like I was saying, we're not, perfect yet. So I imagine this number might go down a little bit as we're better at bringing them in. But I think what this has allowed us to do is we do share information about parent engagement in our CRM so that our admission counselors can follow up with parents and families that are more actively engaged in Campus ESP, knowing that they are a family member who wants to be alongside their student. And so I think it's helped us build those relationships a little bit early. So again, not surprising, but I want that number to be larger because I do think there is an impact of knowing that parent or family member is engaged with PLU information earlier.
Mm-hmm. And as Melody mentioned, within Campus P, we're not going to get into the nitty gritty of this. If you want more information, you're not a Campus ESP partner. We do have demos on Tuesday afternoons, but we have something called a parent promoter score, which really shows how engaged the parents are. And like Melody said, then the counselors can use that information to do that outreach to the parents that are the most interested and most engaged. All right, so tip number 2, and I'm sure all of you are thinking about this as you start to ramp up your visit options for the summer, but promoting campus visit opportunities to families. And Melody, if you want to talk a little bit about what you are doing within the portal to encourage and push your families to visit campus.
Yeah, I think we're using all the tools in the portal to promote visiting. Campus visit is usually the number 2 or number 3 reason students choose PLU in all of our enrollment surveys. So we really do want them to actually step foot on campus and see the place for themselves. Local students seem to especially feel that they know PLU until they get here and they always say it's bigger than I thought, or oh, it's a real school, which is always nice versus just driving by on the street. So we're really using our posts, which is kind of like a blog post. We're using announcements, which is like an email. We're also using the events calendar, which you can see on there. So to make sure they can RSVP pretty much from anywhere in the portal, whether it's coming in their email or whether they're logging in themselves. We want it to appear in multiple places and make it as easy as possible. So yeah, pretty much across the board, as much as we can, we are promoting individual visits as well as events that we're having on campus.
And how have you seen the impact of utilizing these features on your visits?
Yeah, it's hard to totally point to like, this is what made this happen. But I think what you start to see, and this is not just even with visits, especially with announcements, which are the emails that go out or the newsletter when that goes out, we can see bumps. So we see the bump in RSVPs, or we see the bump in something that we've nudged them to do that we don't see quite as big of a bump when we email the student directly. I was saying to Carrie, I consider myself the keeper of the calendar in my household. And I think for a lot of families, that is the mom or the dad or the aunt or the uncle, whoever is that person that's fully involved. And so if you're not getting dates, especially, or events on the calendar, they're not going to happen, right? You're not going to take that day off of work or schedule, move your schedule around or get a babysitter or whatever the case may be. So especially if you have date driven things, I think you have to get in front of that keeper of the calendar.
I love that because that's so true. It really is the families that are going to be driving that. So it's great to get that information out in front of them. And tell me a little bit about creating content within Campus CSP, how that's been going for you and your colleagues.
Yeah, so just specifically around this, we do try to make whatever if we're mailing a postcard about a visit, we try to make the post kind of match that postcard. So they're seeing that same photo on the website, like across all of our branding. So I work really closely with in our office, our marketing and communication person. So I'm using a lot of her content, just kind of rewriting specific words to make it a little bit more similar to or speak to a parent or family member. Campus ESP also mines your website. So your blogs, your news sites, your athletic sites, and they post content for you as well. And then they also post non-PLU content. And, the two I see most are the three most popular. Visits is one of them, is that in terms of why they should visit, what they can ask on a visit, but also here's summer preview day, right? So everything that's broad or specific related to that. But yeah, the content creation is not too hard, especially if you already have a communication flow that you can just tweak slightly and move some of it into Campus ESP.
Yeah, and I do think everyone is thinking as a college or university, of course, we have to invite all of our students to the events, but really getting this information to the parents is going to increase those numbers. So very important to do so. And again, reiterates our tip number one, that the earlier you can get the parents' contact information, the earlier you can start inviting them to visit campus. So all kind of goes together there.
Yeah.
Tip number 3, and this is really something in my experience, the summer months, talking about building excitement and even confidence about the application process, especially when you're working with populations like first generation students, just giving them general information about the college search and the application process, and also starting to build trust within the institution, and that you'll be there for them throughout the process. And Melody, if you want to talk about ways that Pacific Lutheran is getting families excited and getting ready for taking those next steps within the application.
Yeah, I think this is something that was not necessarily, we didn't know this was going to be such a great part of the tool when we signed on. We really wanted to make sure we were helping students through those next steps and those dates and those visits. But what's been really nice is that families have told us they really appreciate feeling like they're not just learning about PLU, but they're learning about the college admission process, the financial aid process. We try to include some of that, as does Campus ESP. And so I think it becomes a resource for them to go to when they're feeling overwhelmed by the senior year of high school, especially. It's so overwhelming. So we try, in terms of just PLU information, to lay out in as clear, concise detail. We give broad emails like this one, which has a lot more than we would normally put in, but kind of lays it out for them, the whole thing. And then we kind of break that down into mini moments, so they're not so they're getting nudged that next step, or they're learning why to apply, not just how to apply, those kind of things. So I have appreciated that allows us to bring a family member along and help the family member feel confident in the process.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And I have to say, I love this. If you want to tell people a little bit about your mascot, because I love this suit up for senior year. I think that's amazing with some of that general content that you were talking about.
Yeah, if anyone's from the Pacific Northwest, we actually say go Lutes, but we are the Knights when it comes to our mascot. Yet no one says it, but that's Lance Lute, our Knight. But we use that, and we started this during the pandemic, during virtual, and we were just trying to connect in any way we could with young people, and we have continued it. It's been really popular for us, but this is a series we do kind of late August, early September, and then sometimes we do a couple in May and June. that have nothing to do with PLU. We don't mention PLU. We don't talk about PLU. We bring in experts from around campus, as well as even our colleagues in K through 12, and we provide webinars on overall college content. And this has been one where students were signing up for it actually too, but we have had now a lot of parents or family members join us in these webinars since we've started promoting them on Campus ESP. And I think this is just one of those ways we're showing that we're not just here to talk about our campus. We really do want to help encourage young people, especially in our state, to consider post-secondary education. I mentioned visits is one of the top clicks, but financial aid is the other, anything related to financial aid, paying for college, and anything related to actually like student mental health is the other one that is clicked on quite a bit. And so, what can we provide in terms of content that supports what clearly students are seeking? And this is one of those ways we've done that.
Yeah, and it just goes into that trust building. Like you said, not only, we hope that you'll consider our institution, like you're saying, you'll hope they'll consider Pacific Lutheran, but again, you're still there to provide that information about the process. Even if, you would consider yourself an expert on admissions and you have a student about to go through this process.
Yes.
But you're going to find, oh, wow, this is different, or this school's doing it this way. And so even someone with so much experience is still going to be gaining new information. So we can imagine how some of our families that have never gone through this process or very far removed through the process are going to have a lot of questions.
Well, and I even think all of us, if we stepped back, like the work I was doing 3 years ago in admission, 5 years ago in admission, it's just changing so rapidly. The FAFSA is changing dramatically this year. There's so much, the way buying names is working is changing so much this year. And those are things that even if you went through college 4 years ago are now different. And so our first generation families really need us, but really all of our families, I think, need to understand the differences than when they went through this process.
And I think that goes back to some of that rogue information that's out there. You have the family that their student graduated 4 years ago and they're trying to be helpful to share information. But like you said, things have changed. Every year things can change. So they might be giving tips on filling out the FAFSA. And it's like, hey, it's a totally different landscape out here right now with the FAFSA. So definitely something to keep in mind.
Yeah.
And how was your experience with students getting into your application pool sooner? Do those students typically yield better for you? You're
Not
able to communicate
because of our state.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so because we're rolling admission and mostly Washington, our numbers don't usually, for a lot of schools, their early applicants usually yield better. We kind of buck that trend a little bit, but that has just a lot more to do with geographically where we're located. But one of the things we always struggled with was we did such a good job communicating with those early applicants. It's hard to redo all of that for someone who applies in January, right? And so what I do like about this tool and some of the things that we've done for students are we've tried to automate things so that even if you get into Campus ESP or you get into our inquiry system a little bit later, you're not missing anything. And so there are ways to do drip campaigns in Campus ESP and that kind of thing. And those have been really helpful as well.
Yeah, good to know. And I can speak to the other side of that. When I was at Pitt, really those students who jumped in to filling out an application right at the beginning of the process were some of our most interested students and did yield higher. So generating that excitement. So when the application does open, that they're going ahead on that first day or within the first week, completing the application and hitting that submit button.
Yeah. We do have a congratulations, your student was admitted that gets posted, right? A week after to make sure the student has already found out and all of that kind of stuff. And we do get some fun comments on there. So you can celebrate them along the way, which is great.
That is great. A little bit more about how great things have been at Pacific Lutheran. If you want to talk about kind of your takeaways for the upcoming cycle, seeing this increase in applications, and then of course, subsequently your increase in deposits.
Yeah. So, we've had a good year, but we've also had bad years and we go up and down. We're a regional small school. So yes, we're really happy and excited to have this really great year. And we did a lot of new things. So it's hard to point to just one thing. But we do think And we've received a lot of feedback from parents and family, and we launched a parent enrollment survey in our portal. And it's been really interesting to see the difference between student enrollment surveys and parent enrollment surveys. They're similar, but parents give us a lot more information. And so, we've been able to see that they really did appreciate. We get a lot of comments that they're glad we communicated with them separately from their student, so that they didn't have to nag them, but they could kind of know what was going on in the background, which has been kind of nice. And I do think that helps both with getting students to actually finish their application, but also getting students to make the decision to deposit. We've also had a lot of other growth in areas. We did launch an automatic admission program 3 years ago, kind of homegrown, and we really saw that take off this year. So some of it also came through, especially that increase in applications, opening up and bringing down some of those barriers to application for our families in the state.
Yeah, that's really great to hear. All right, moving on. We talked about the importance of getting names, the importance of getting families and students on campus to visit, and then getting them excited and sharing information with them about the application process. Our last tip, we're going to talk about considering special populations. Everybody has different institutional goals and different enrollment goals, but within that, the special populations that you're looking to potentially increase at your institution. And Melody, if you want to talk a little bit about segmenting your family engagement strategy for special populations and how you're doing that.
Yeah, so we do some segmenting right now. We do have a first generation kind of segment, and we do add some specific communication to that. We have a segment for like Spanish speaking families and have tried to create some content for that area as well. And then we've also done some to our unique populations, like we have a top merit scholarship. And so we do have it's called the presidential scholarships. And we've segmented some communication to those students as well. So that allows us to talk about specific events or specific application deadlines to two groups of families, so that you're not kind of saying, we think you haven't done this thing, or you get to speak with more that personalization that I think all of us are trying to put in our student communication. This really allows you to personalize some of your parent and family content a bit more. There are some new tools coming out, so I haven't used all of them yet, but I already have plans to do our automatic admission group to make some special segments for that. We're looking at segmenting by our admission counselors. So maybe to allow them to actually introduce themselves and have a voice in the portal a little bit more than we've done. We have really strong relationships between our admission team and our families. And then we're looking at some in-state, out-of-state segmenting as well. So yeah, I'm excited actually to even do more of this because I think that's going to be is going to kind of help us even be a little bit better at using this tool.
Yeah, and really taking it to that next level. It's almost a no-brainer, but it is a brainer, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Because we always, you're always thinking about how you're segmenting with your students, right? Different student populations, but then, right, you need to mirror that with your parent and families as well. So love to hear those different strategies that you're implementing. And we definitely, can see that you're having success with an increase in first gen applications and an increase in first gen student deposits as well. So anything here you want to add about seeing that increase? Of course, we know Campus ESP played a part in that, but other things that you've implemented?
Yeah, no, I think it's just, I think it is in that trust building and that early communication. We're not just jumping in at a point in time when we need their student. And so I think that's really nice for families. And, we have families that don't choose us and they're really open to communicating with us about where they chose and how we helped them choose that school too. Now we hit our numbers this year, so we're okay with that. But I think those have just been nice pieces of feedback for how like our president and our campus has embraced admission as not just about PLU, but about how can we help students in our community, in our state, in our region.
And you're doing a great job of setting the expectation throughout the process. This is how we do communicate with families. if we're communicating with you throughout the application process this way, we're setting up, this is how we're going to continue to communicate with you as a current student, and how you'll be treated here at the institution. So you're really just setting those expectations for the families, which I'm sure they appreciate.
Yeah.
Okay, students with engaged parents are more likely to enroll. Seeing the increase of 4.8% with some of that data coming in for the fall 2023 cohort. So seeing a bit of an increase this year and hoping to maintain that. Melody, you want to tell us your thoughts on this increase?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's some of what we've already commented on. I would say we're still a new user, even though I appreciate the campus ESP says we're doing a really good job, because I feel like there's still stuff to learn. And so I think every year we've gotten a little bit better about, one, getting students into campus ESP. And I think that was what we did a much better job of this year. And I think that's where we're seeing a lot of this, is getting them in earlier, but also setting up more automated loading between our CRM and campus ESP so that it's happening pretty constantly versus, every now and then. So I think that has really helped us too, because the more we get in there, the more we can engage with them. And so I think we've done a lot better with data integration this year. And I think that also helps this.
Yeah, for sure. That makes a lot of sense. And some more, I know we're throwing a lot of data at you here at the end, but the reason we're sharing this with you is because obviously to shout out what a great job Pacific Lutheran is doing. And I know it's a great space to be in, over the summer thinking, hey, we're meeting our goals, we're exceeding our goals. So we definitely want to share in that excitement with you. But we, across all of our campus partners, we see the yield rates are 5% higher than average. So typically our schools see a 5% increase when they have a parent that is within campus ESP. All right, so just to recap our tips here, of course, it was interesting when we started talking about these tips and we realized we'd missed tip number one, right? Because you definitely getting that information before the application process is definitely going to be key. So thinking about how you're going to start to gather your parent and family contact information as early on in the funnel as you can. Of course, I think we all kind of know that promoting the campus visit is going to be key. We know that students who visit campuses are going to be much more likely to apply and then ultimately enroll. I love what Pacific Lutheran and Melody, what you're doing about building this excitement and confidence throughout the application process and just serving as a resource for those students and those families who might need a little bit extra, even if they ultimately don't end up coming to your school. And of course, considering those special populations and segmenting out that content to really make sure you're hitting home on those points with your prospective families and their students. Anything else you want to add here?
I know that probably people in this space some are campus ESP partners and some might not be yet. And I guess I just want to say that no matter where you are and whether you have this tool or not, I think there are ways to do all of these things outside of campus ESP. For us, it was easier to have like a built-in portal. We have the current student portal as well, but it's not run out of our office. And the office it was run out of really didn't have the capacity to do a lot with it. So they mostly posted the things they didn't do it. Campus ESP mostly posted things on their behalf. So through Grown and Flown articles or through their own content or finding things on our website. And recently my colleague was like, I'm going to send my first announcement out of campus ESP, 9 months after getting the tool. And he was like, can you come down here? And it took me about, 3 minutes for him to send that email. He already had written it. But I just loved, he was like, this is so easy. And I was like, yeah. And I was like, now, see, I've made you think I'm doing all this work in my office and you now know how easy this is. But I think the other thing is it kind of works for you, whether you're doing a lot of work on it or not. But if you choose to kind of really make an effort, it's not that difficult. This was just the tool that helped us out. But I think all of these things are important to consider no matter if you have this tool or not.
Yes, absolutely. And coming from the other side to this side, I constantly say, hey, this is actually like pretty easy to use and pretty user friendly. So
Yeah.
I know most staff doesn't want to add another system, another thing that they have to learn, another training that they have to go through. So the ease of being able
Yeah.
to do something to help out your strategy is going to be really important. All right. So we're going to turn it over to our Q&A. Remember that we can't see you, so you're going to have to utilize the chat feature. And I do believe that Mel is going to go ahead and hop back on here to take a look at the chat, and we can go forward with any questions or comments that you have.
Yeah, we didn't get any during your presentation. Hopefully it's because people were so enthralled in Melody's amazing results and you guys' perspectives. But at this point, we do have some time. So if anybody has any questions about both Campus ESP, Melody's strategy, hurdles she's hit, how she's gotten around them, or anything else, please do drop those into either the chat or the Q&A. Both are open. And we can spend the next 15 minutes on those. Anybody has any questions they want to bring up?
I know a question I get when I talk about this tool sometimes is, aren't you afraid you're sending too much to parents and family members? I don't think so, because they can ignore them or they can unsubscribe. But the tool does have the ability for a family to choose if they just want like a newsletter once a month or once every 2 weeks. So there is some ability to control the frequency. But going back to that statistic you shared, clearly they also want to be communicated with. And sometimes it's easier to over communicate and then to pull back once you see what people are opening or not opening or when they're opening things. Than it is to like not send anything at all. We have kind of a rule in our office that it's better to post or send than to not send at all. And I think sometimes we get caught up in this idea of perfection or, not being able to like, oh, is this email written just right at the right time? But parents and family members are pretty forgiving if you mess up a little bit. I've had to send out a like, oops, that was the wrong link message. What's funny is those tend to get better click-through rates than the first one does. But I think I would send rather than not send is my personal tip. We haven't had anyone call and say, you email me too much. We've had students call and tell us we emailed them too much, but we've never had a parent or family member call.
I think that's a great mentality, Melody. And the phrase that I use with my own team is perfection is the enemy of done.
Yeah, correct.
Just try something, right? Try it. If it doesn't work, you learn something and you try again. Better than not trying at all. Always.
Yeah.
All right, we do have a couple questions coming in. To start, I think this one is more of for Carrie, although we can definitely talk to Melody about how she set it up at her campus. But how does Campus ESP interface or integrate with a CRM like Slate?
Yeah, we're a preferred partner with Slate, so we can directly integrate, which makes the whole thing a lot easier for you. But that is definitely one of the great features of Campus ESP is that being a preferred partner. And we can certainly talk more about that, but during implementation, we'll just work with you to make sure that that's seamless for you.
Yeah, and just to add to that, one of the things that I think is most helpful, I know that Melody's team has utilized this, is because we integrate with the CRM. Our system knows where the student is in your enrollment funnel. So as your student moves through, their parent is moving through a kind of a similar funnel on our end. And the content that parent sees when they log in or when they open their newsletter can change dynamically based on that. So once a student moves from inquiry to applicant, we no longer need to talk to them about visiting campus maybe, or about, submitting that application. Now we can talk to them about the next steps in the application process or when deposit deadlines are going to be. So you can change that content. So you're really sending that right message at the right time to the right people.
Yeah, that's definitely the other way we segment is obviously on funnel stage. That's the obvious one. So I didn't even mention it, but yes, very, very important. But we've also added 2 fields into our Slate CRM, parent promoter score, parent number 1 promoter score and parent number 2 promoter score. You can add multiple, but we've just decided 2 is good, but it allows us, our counselors, to see who's actively engaged with the system.
That's great. Melody, for you, do you have any tips for getting families to register for the portal?
Yeah, I think it's just constantly putting it in front of them. We also have started this year and just this spring, and I think we're going to get better at it next year, is if a parent asks a question that is already answered in the portal, we've been saying like, we answer these questions in this space, or we've had a lot of families lately. This is more now that they've deposited and are getting ready to register, but they're like, how do I know when the deadline is for when the bill is due, or when the FAFSA opens next year or whatever? And so instead of answering the question, we've been encouraging them to, I mean, we still kind of answer it, but we try to push them also into the portal so that they know that they can probably check that at any time and the answer is in there. But like I said, it's a QR code at all your events. We're considering bringing out our postcards to fairs next year. So when a student is filling out like a student interest card, or we're scanning their thing to hand it to a parent or family member that's standing next to them and saying, if you want your own set of information, this is where you find it. And then it is asking for it on your RFI form, whether that's in a follow-up or whether that's a question where they can, I just saw this, see, this is me as a parent. My son signed up for his first college visit, and they said, would you like your parent or family member to also receive information? He checked yes, and then it opened up parent first name, parent second name, like last name. And I was like, oh, that's smart. And very easy, right? Because it only opens up if the kid checks yes. And so I think it's building really good RFI forms too, or follow-up forms.
Great. I guess another one for you, Melody, here. Have you seen more success in sending the same message or email to a student and the parent at the same time, or sending separate messages based on the audience?
Yeah, we were not having great success with the BCC or the CC of the parent or family member. I don't know if it's because like Google didn't like it, so it wasn't getting opened as much, or sometimes I think although the student wants their parent to be with them in this process, they don't want them to be like together all the time. And so we try to send the parent or family email out that matches the student one if we're deciding to do that. We don't do it for everyone, but usually a couple days after. And sometimes we even say like, your student has recently received an email about this same thing. And that actually seems to work really well, because I think it creates that dinner table conversation potentially of like, hey, did you get that email from PLU a couple days ago? Which I think is kind of more normal these days, but I haven't necessarily tested this theory. So I don't know if one works better than the other. That's just kind of how we've staged our emails, but we do see our bumps in whatever it is, an RSVP, paying your deposit, whatever it is, bump up a little bit on the parent one, a little bit more than on the student one, especially if it's a date-based thing.
That makes a lot of sense, quite honestly.
Yeah.
And I know from our customers, and Carrie, you might even have some actual customer stories that we've seen that certain things are more interesting to a parent and certain things are more interesting to a student, right? And so if you have the bandwidth in your team to write a message that is tailored a little bit to that audience, you may see better results just because you're going to lean on those pain points or those exciting things that are going to be more applicable to that individual.
Yeah, we haven't created a ton of content specific to campus ESP. That is also one of our plans this year, is maybe do a little bit more of that. The one thing we did last year is we had our student workers all give a tip to prospective student families. And it was something we'd never used for students but they were very sweet tips. And yeah, parents and family members really liked that series. We just thought it was kind of fun and a way to highlight some of the students on campus in a different way. And but it got good interaction. So we're going to try to do a little bit more of that next year.
I will say anecdotally, most of the schools that I work with, they're definitely seeing higher open rates with the emails that are being sent to parents than are going to students for sure. So if there's something that you need someone to see, getting in front of the parents is going to be really important.
Yeah, that's 100% accurate. Yeah, good questions.
Very good questions. I think that's all we have. Unless anybody has any, oh, okay, well, this is a follow-up. I think they like your plan and they want to know, do you have a parent email text message template that you'd be willing to share? I will say that we do have some templates on our website. So there are some that are publicly available, but I can't answer for Melody exactly.
No, so there's a couple of things I think that, especially if you haven't used the tool, one, the way it's set up is almost template style. So you don't have to have your own template. Like you can add a photo, you can add a button at the bottom. So I just kind of use the same one. Campus ESP wrote most of our emails for us when we started. So the other thing, I don't ever want to turn this into a like, I am only trying to pitch this product, but that was the thing that was most surprising to me. I thought I was going to have to take on a lot more work because I didn't have a team member that could take on this work at the time, but it was so important. I wanted to try it. So I knew it was on me and I was like, I'm not going to have time to write drip flows and comm flows and all these things. And then when we did our launch, all of my communication flow was written. I mean, I went through and edited it and obviously provided content, but a lot of the work was done for me. And now that we're in our third, I guess, cycle, I'm just going through and editing those to make sure the links are still right, the dates are still right. And then I'm like reopening or making them happen again. So Campus ESP helps a lot with the creation of templates. I am more than happy to share. Our emails will be on the next slide. If you have like specific questions or want to see what one looks like, or even want to Zoom with me and have me show you the back end, which I know they'll do for you, but if you want my perspective, you can. I'm an open book generally when it comes to kind of what we do. It's not, there's not a lot of secret sauce. I think we all like to think there are, but there's not that much. And there's just some of us have had more capacity to try things than others. And so I think there's good in sharing. So yeah, if you want to see an example of an email or a template, you can text out of Campus ESP. We do not currently text out of Campus ESP. So Mel or Carrie might have more to say about that.
Yeah, there are actually some templates on our website. If you go to that campusesp.com/research page, we actually just posted an article a couple weeks ago with 4 examples of schools that are using our SMS feature and the results that they've seen, but it actually includes the template of the text messages that they were using to either generate, an awareness around a deposit deadline or something like that. So those resources are there for you. But again, you also now here have Carrie's email. So if there's something that you're looking for and you're just like, I'd love to double click down into how people are using the system to do this, please do reach out. We will find you the link. We will find you an example. Our real goal here is to just help you better understand the impact that families can make for your goals. Ellen just asked where the SMS resources. It should be on the main page of the blog on campusesp.com. I can even try and really quickly before we drop the URL in there for you. Hold on a quick second and I will send you all.
Oh, Lacey already did it for you.
Oh, Lacey, one of my team members and she's the best. Thank you, Lacey. She's quicker than I am right now too. Yeah, there's plenty of articles there, but this is a great one for examples. All right, we are getting close to our time being up. So I do want to take a minute and just thank Carrie and Melody for their insights, their time, their transparency. I think we had a lot of really good discussion points here. Exciting to see what PLU is doing and all the new things that potentially you guys could be doing in the next year. I know you said you were like a newer user, but we really do think of Melody and her team as a super user. They experiment, they try things, they're excited, and that's the energy we like. So just thank you guys again for joining us. As a reminder, if you missed the very beginning, this recording and the deck, as well as some highlights, will be sent to every person who attended by sometime by end of day tomorrow, my goal is. And so if you want to share it with any of your colleagues or friends, please do. We hope you enjoyed your time with us today and found some useful information. And thanks again for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.